Today we're going to be talking about lilacs. Lilacs have always been one of my favorite smelling flowers, and they're so fragrant that you usually smell them before you even see them. There are a lot of people out there that are actually very surprised to learn that lilacs are in fact edible. They bloom in the spring, and the bloom is very short, so if you do plan on doing something with them, you should act on that fairly quickly, because within a week or so, the flowers do fall off. To ID them, you're going to look for these large clusters of very fragrant, trumpet-shaped flowers. The flowers do range in color from white, pink, and purple, and depending on the color of lilac that you have, they will smell and taste different. So the recipes that I'm making today might taste a little bit different to you if you have a different color of lilac than I do. When I was younger, I actually used to pick these and pretend they were little things of cotton candy, because when I was a kid, that's what they looked like to me. Today I'm going to show you how to use lilacs 3 different ways, and we're going to combine those 3 separate uses into one final product. So we're going to be making lilac syrup, lilac sugar, we're going to use the flowers as a garnish, and we're going to combine those to make a cake. First things first, I'm going to start by soaking the lilacs in some water. I always do this before I start cooking with wild edibles because I want to evacuate any bugs that might be hiding inside the flowers. If the idea of potentially eating bugs doesn't bother you, then you can go ahead and skip this step. Now that the lilacs have been soaking for about 15 minutes and they're all cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and start removing the flower petals. This is a very tedious task, and I recommend putting on a good movie or maybe listening to your favorite podcast when you do this. You want to make sure that the lilac petals are completely separated from the green parts and the stem, because the stems and the green parts will make your dishes very bitter. The first recipe we're going to be making today is lilac syrup. I'm only going to be making a very small batch, so if you want to make a larger quantity, you're going to want to make sure that you increase the ratios. To make a simple syrup, we usually use a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar and water. So today I'm going to use half a cup of sugar and half a cup of water, and because I want my syrup to be infused with the lilac petals, I'm going to also be adding in half a cup of lilac flowers. Over medium heat, we're going to combine our water and our sugar, and we're going to mix until the sugar is completely dissolved. Once our mixture starts to boil, I'm going to add in a couple of blueberries. This is a completely optional step, and the only reason why I do this is to achieve a nice fuchsia color in my syrup. If you don't add in any blueberries, your syrup is going to end up being a dull brown color. If you want your syrup to have that beautiful, vibrant fuchsia color, you're going to need to add a couple of blueberries in order to achieve that. We're going to add in our lilac petals, and we're going to give it a very gentle stir until everything is well combined. Then we're going to cover our pot, turn down the heat, and let the syrup simmer for about 5 minutes. We're going to remove our mixture from the heat, and we're going to allow it to steep for an extended period of time. The length of time that you steep the syrup for greatly depends on your personal preferences and your personal taste. If you're looking for a syrup that's going to be a lot stronger and a lot more fragrant, you're going to want to make sure that you steep this for a minimum 5 hours probably. If you're looking for something a little bit more subtle in flavor, you're only going to want to steep this for a couple of hours, maybe 2-3 hours tops. My best advice would be to give the syrup a try every hour just to see where it's at. That way you don't risk over steeping it or under steeping it. I personally like my lilac syrup to be a little bit more subtle in flavor, so I'm only going to steep mine for about 3 hours. Now that the syrup has achieved flavor to my liking, I'm just going to pour it into a jar and strain out the flower petals. The syrup will keep in a tightly sealed jar for up to 2 weeks in the fridge. My favorite way to use it is to just add it into drinks, specifically lemonade. It's a really simple way to give your lemonade a nice twist. Lilac sugar is very simple to make. It's just 2 ingredients, sugar and lilac petals. You're going to start by layering some sugar in a clean jar, and then you're going to layer down some petals, then some sugar, then some petals. You're going to repeat the process until the jar is full or until you've used as much sugar as you'd like. You're going to want to make sure that the petals are as dry as possible, because if they're too damp, they're going to make the sugar go hard. We're also not going to seal the jar with a tight-fitting lid. Instead, we're going to cover it with a napkin and an elastic band. This allows for some airflow so that if there is any dampness, It will hopefully evaporate out of the jar rather than staying trapped in there. And over time, as the petals begin to dry out, naturally there will be a little bit of dampness that come off the petals, so making sure that the jar is not sealed tightly is extremely important. You're going to keep the jar somewhere out of direct sunlight, and you're going to let it steep for a few days. Again, the length of time that you steep it for is completely dependent on your personal preferences and your personal taste. If you want a very strong and fragrant sugar, you're going to let this steep for anywhere between 5 to 7 days. If you're looking for more of a subtle flavor, you're only going to let it steep for a couple of days. When it comes to floral scents, my personal preference is less is more. Personally, for me, I feel like if you let it steep for too long, it ends up being too perfumey and too overpowering, and that could potentially ruin your dish. It's very important that you stir this mixture every single day. That way, if there is any dampness, you're breaking up the clumps and you're helping the sugar to dry out. Also, when you stir it daily, you're going to be able to smell it and see if you like where it's at. It's been 2 days for me and I really like how it smells, so I'm going to stop the process here and I'm going to use this sugar in my next recipe. The sugar can be used in many different ways. The most common ways to use it are in baked goods, but you could also use it to flavor your tea, your coffee, anything you'd like. For our final recipe today, we're going to be making a lilac lemon poppy seed loaf. We're going to be incorporating the lilac sugar as well as the lilac syrup in this recipe. Full disclosure, I can't bake to save my life, so my best advice for you would be to find your favorite lemon poppy seed loaf recipe online, and when you make your glaze, instead of using water or lemon juice to combine with the powdered sugar, you're just going to use the lilac syrup instead. In a large bowl, I'm combining the flour, the baking powder, and the poppy seeds, and I'm whisking until they're well incorporated. In a separate bowl, I'm going to cream together the butter, lemon zest, and sugar. Once they're well mixed, I'm going to add the eggs and I'm going to mix until smooth. Now I'm going to slowly incorporate the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients, and I'm also going to add the milk and the lemon juice. I preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and I'm just going to add my batter into my pan lined with parchment paper. We're going to bake for about 1 hour. For our glaze, we're just going to mix our powdered sugar with our lilac syrup. I'm going to be adding 1 tablespoon of syrup at a time until I get the consistency that I'd like. We're going to mix until everything is well combined. I love how the color of the syrup naturally turned the glaze into a beautiful lilac color. 0 artificial food dyes required. Finally, once the cake is cooled, we're going to glaze our cake and garnish it with the beautiful little lilac flowers. And there we have it. A beautiful springtime cake that will surely impress your friends and family.